Welcome to our Facebook network on Lone Star Saturday, brought to you by John Lester's Insure One, great insurance company here in San Antonio. I'm Gary DeLaune, without Blanquita, who is in D.C. at this time, but we have one of my good friends, Richard C. Oliver, the par excellence former sports editor of the San Antonio Express News, Newsday in New York, now works for the city of San Antonio, and Andrew brought his son-in-law, and they do a podcast. How many nights a week do you do that?
Well, once a week.
Just once a week.
Yeah. What's brewing sports? We talk about our favorite topics being sports and anything that's what's brewing.
That's
craft
right.
beer, coffee.
That's right. Last night
Sometimes
it was beer.
a little moonshine on occasion. You know.
Well,
You
there's
brew it, we talk about it.
there's so many things going on. I mean, get out and vote today.
Yeah.
You know.
I like the way, and I like the symmetry of the.
Yes, I know.
That's
Right.
right.
You talk about voting, and you have
Yeah.
It's very nice.
That's
I like
true.
It. Yeah.
By the way, there are so many things going on. Not only is the apparently the agreement made between Mr. Trump and Mexico, where we have 1 million people that are expected to come into the borders of the United States. And that doesn't mean Canada, but so that's taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
We want to congratulate the
I'm really
Hans.
worried about the border of South Carolina.
Yeah,
That's the border I worry about.
really.
Yeah.
That Georgia and South Carolina.
Yeah, that's the one. You know, keep those Georgians out of South Carolina. I've been talking about that for weeks.
That's
We have the Hannes not only winning the boys baseball championship, but the girls winning the softball title.
Yeah.
First, that's only the 6th time in sports history in Texas that's happened in the same
That you've had a
year.
spring sports sweep like that.
And then Blanco goes for the championship today, and we have Toronto winning last night, so they need
Yeah.
3 games to 1 over the injured Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, the Kawhi series is not going our way.
no.
Why Kawhi?
Why Kawhi?
He can cry.
You know what? We're gonna have to come to grips on this though, Gary. That Kawhi Leonard's going to be a champion again, and he'll probably win the MVP of that series. So, but you know what? We knew that in San Antonio.
Sure.
We knew what.
Did he check with his uncle to see if it's okay?
I think it's okay. I think they're gonna approve this championship. It's gonna be
That's
just
right. I
fine.
heard actually that it's Uncle Dennis who will be receiving the MVP.
MVP award. Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
you
right.
can thank me for bringing Kawhi
Well,
to
see,
Great
I'm
White
not
North.
sure what medical school he graduated from, but you know, he's diagnosed.
Doctor, Doctor Uncle Dennis.
Happy birthday to you know, a lot of people don't like this guy, but I like him. Happy birthday to Kanye West.
Yeah, Kanye. He's
Yeah.
good, yeah.
He's 42 today, and
I'm impressed you pronounced his name correctly.
well, I always said go West, young man, and that's what he did.
Kanye, I'm very impressed with this. This is, and you know, Gary impresses me every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's on top of this stuff.
Well,
I didn't realize he was a fan of the
we
Yeezys.
also have this is National Best Friend Day.
Right.
He's a big fella,
Yeah.
and
It's a different show.
yeah.
That's right.
You and Andrew, you sure you guys? we want
He
to
probably
thank.
is my best friend in
Yeah,
town.
We
exactly.
want to thank Rob Hicks for being here with us today. He crawled out of bed and came here to be with us.
Yeah, I wish to
Absolutely.
turn the camera around, Rob. Show everybody what you're
That's
dressed
right.
like.
That's
you know.
right.
It's also Barbara Bush's birthday, born in 1925.
Oh,
Barbara was
man.
one of my favorite all-time
Gosh,
first
what a
ladies.
wonderful lady.
And also, I just want to say this, get this off my chest now. I think Melania Trump is one first-class first lady.
Hmm?
She's beautiful. She stays behind the scenes, and you know, no matter what she does or what Donald Trump does, they're going to catch flack. Doesn't make any difference. So,
Right.
the D-Day ceremony, I couldn't sleep the other night, so I woke up at 3:15 in the morning on D-Day. I watched the entire ceremony. Probably the best speech he's ever made since he's been president.
Yeah, it was remarkable.
And
speech.
and the interviews of those 130 heroes that were there. Can you imagine the stress, the flight time of getting those guys who were 90, 95, 97 years
Right.
old?
And every year, it's less guys show up.
The one gentleman who skydived into the ceremony area.
That was so cool to see.
my
That was
goodness.
so cool to see.
And it's funny you talking about you waking up at 3:15 to watch that. I always try to imagine, because fortunately I don't have to imagine this, and my son didn't have to imagine this, but on that day, I mean the day before D-Day, those guys thinking about what was about to happen, and you're going to be dumped on this beach in front of Germany battlements and have to
Right.
face that kind of fire, and just the bravery of it, and a lot of those guys drowned just their equipment dragged them under before they even got to the beach.
Right.
You know, and I just think about those kind of things in warfare, and it's a small thing, but it was interesting that my son, when he was small, we went and we did to a paintball thing one day, and I remember that the kids, we were out running around doing paintball, and it's the first time they'd ever done it. And they get out, you know, they blow the whistle, you run out there, and all of a sudden you're getting pelted and pinged and everything, and they're diving under the, and you know, I'm just got shot all over the place, but the kids were diving, and they were terrified, you know, they were terrified of just paintball, and one of the kids, hey Blanquita, we're
discussing
D-Day,
D-Day,
and it just reminded me that the kids were terrified. And one of the kids said, "Mr. Oliver, can you imagine if these were real bullets?"
Oh, wow.
So it's a small example of, you know, these kids who were like 7 or 8 years old, 9 years old, who were running around, and they're feeling just paintball bullets were scaring them, and thinking, you brought it up the other day that some of these guys at D-Day and some of them, they're 18, 19 years old.
Right.
These guys are, you know, we're in high school, just out of high school.
3 cousins over there. One was on the arrival invasion on the beach, and he had some horrible story. He wouldn't talk about it for like 20 years.
Oh.
And he was a medic, and so the heroes of this country,
right?
And they're all going all too fast. On the 75th anniversary, they won't be around. Some of them for the 80th.
Yeah.
And it was just very.
Oh, I'm just trying to schedule Gary for a jump. I mean, that one guy was like 97, and he said that he could go again. Gary is a youngster. Come on.
What, George Bush was jumping at age 90, and didn't he skydive?
Yes, he did.
George H.W. Bush?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think I'll be doing that.
We could live stream that, though. Right? We could set up a
did
rig and.
That's what was so amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we know that not only was that such an impressive ceremony at Normandy, it was also impressive, the one that Vice President Pence, master of ceremonies for that one, and they had several thousand veterans there. And you know, how could any American watch any of that event that day and not have a tear in their eye?
No.
Because it was so impressive. And I know you've been up there. You emceed the Memorial Day Parade, and Joe Mantegna and others were there, and it's been a memorable month for America. And I hope that we can continue this tradition and this memory and this knowledge that these men made our country free today, Blanquita.
Well, you know, Gary, the great news, too, was, you know, Chris, I always talk about how everything there is so heart-rendering. You get this well of pride, but there's still a lot of, I say a lot, there are quite a few people that were in World War II that are present. You have members of the Tuskegee Airmen, 1 or 2 are still there. We have one of the Band of Brothers still there. And it's just so touching when they come back. The Gold Star mothers and their families will carry these huge portraits of their loved ones that were lost going back way around to 1917, you know, back in World War I. So it means a lot. And the other thing that we're happy to announce, that looks like the Rolling Thunder, those Vietnam veterans that are on the motorcycles, will be coming back again next year.
Wonderful. That's good news too, because that's such an integral part of that particular time. And we know that there has been all kinds of controversy for a few seconds, maybe as long as a minute or two. Even some of the left-leaning media did say that was a great speech by Trump, but then they added the asterisk, but. So, you know,
Well, yeah. Politics.
It's embarrassing to me, and it's shameful that we as Americans cannot forget about politics just for a day.
Right.
And for Nancy Pelosi to say he needs to be in prison, I'm embarrassed that she is the Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives, but that's just my opinion.
I want to go back to you jumping out of an airplane, though. Blanquita, I want this to happen, and because you know what, Andrew, I have no interest in doing that personally.
Really?
But if we get Gary, we do a What's Brewing Sports podcast
Live on the plane.
with some of our favorite craft beers
Yes.
from the plane.
That's right. That's right.
That'll be your favorite brew.
And our favorite brew, watching Gary jump out at 10,000 feet or whatever it would be.
That's right.
How far up, Blanquita, how far up do you have to go for that kind of stuff?
Well, I don't know, but you know, Gary, I'm thinking of what kind of brew they'd have to have. It's either pale ale.
Well, the biggest jump I make now is from the bed to the bathroom every
The bed to the
morning.
bathroom. No, we changed that. But I see a podcast.
Oh, that'd be a great show.
It would be a live stream.
That's
That
right.
might be when we go live
That's right.
to watch you.
There were awkward moments on that trip to the UK. There was one awkward moment, if you can imagine this, because the Queen said that she loved him. She loved Trump. She said that she liked Trump was like a son to her. But the other thing is, the awkward moment was when he met with Charles and Camilla, and Melania is wearing an outfit that's honoring Diana.
Oh,
Wow.
oh, wow.
That was wonderful. Well,
That's interesting.
yeah. By the way, this program on our Facebook network, and this is a new experiment we have, and we may be even going to a better network
Mm-hmm.
as the technology is improved and we have more people watching. And Mr. Van Diver out of Minnesota says that he has some ideas that would help our listening audience and our viewing audience and whatever audience we may have left. But we want to thank John Lester and Insure One here in San Antonio. He has insurance that covers the entire gamut of your automobile, your life, your home. Doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
And he's down at the coast today in his houseboat. And he doesn't have Sophia Loren there with him either.
Yeah, and we know for one thing that the houseboat's insured.
Do you think John Lester could insure your jump at Lester?
Ah.
That's
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I could probably name a couple of beneficiaries.
And
in case things go south.
And they could say, shoot,
That's right.
he's jumping again. We want to say happy birthday today to Joan Rivers. She's 86. Alexis Smith, one of the great beauties of the
Joan
past.
Rivers is 86, where she's never going to never have plastic surgery again.
No, that's true. She's dead and gone.
Departed.
Alexis Smith, 1921. She was married to, I think,
Alexis
Alexis
Smith.
Stevens. Married a guy who played Peter Gunn. And then Robert Preston,
No, that was
19...
Lola Albright. Lola Albright married Peter Gunn.
Ah.
No, she was the star on Peter Gunn. I don't think she was married to Peter Gunn. But anyway, Robert Preston, 1918, Mr. Music Man, and Frank Lloyd Wright, 1867 was when he was
Now,
born.
can you have a name Gunn these days?
Peter
Peter Gunn, would it have to be Peter something else now?
Well,
Well, it's Peter Gunn.
Ah, okay. I'll make sure if you.
And
Now,
also-
do you remember the theme song from that? Do you remember because it was in the Blues Brothers?
Yes, I do remember that. I remember that. I remember the album. I remember my mother playing that album a lot.
Yeah.
yes.
Theme for Peter Gunn.
Henry Mancini.
Henry Mancini, that's right.
That's right. And he was still looking for the Moon River.
It-
Also, 1986, it was on this date when Boston won its 16th NBA title.
yeah,
The
that's
Celtics.
nobody's gonna challenge that.
No, and not even Kawhi's uncle.
No,
So-
no. And
But we want to thank you for being. This is Andrew Brown over here. He is the son-in-law of Richard Oliver over here. I'm Gary DeLaune, and just let me say real quickly, I was inundated with phone calls and people on Facebook. They were so gracious and concerned about, this old guy's health.
Mhm.
And I lost my brother too at the same time, and they've all been very, very, very
yeah,
sympathetic.
you've had
Yeah.
a couple of tough weeks.
Yes, I have. But it helps to have friends like you guys. And by the way, this was another nice guy that you know. Udoka is now going to Philadelphia to
Yeah,
join.
Ime Udoka, to join Brett Brown. As
Brett Brown's one of the really nice guys in
Yep.
the coaching profession.
Yeah, and Ime's a star on the rise. I mean, that's the
I
guy
think
that's going
so.
to
Yeah.
be. And
Like Monty Williams.
another off the Spurs tree.
That's right.
It's
Yes.
an
Another
amazing
protege of
thing when you see what's going on with that, and even even as much as we don't appreciate Kawhi Leonard probably as much as a lot of people do, but undeniable talent and everything honed in the Spurs system. Then you watch Danny Green, also another
Yes.
guy who became this
Great-
defensive
great
mainstay because of working in the Spurs system and being content to fill a role that he knew would be valuable for the team. And now it's about Danny Green is the unheralded hero of these playoffs. He has been outstanding on defense, but we've seen that. We root for him. That's the positive of this Toronto thing. But Ime Udoka, another one. So you just look at that Spurs influence throughout the NBA.
Everywhere you look,
It's
Presti
remarkable.
and Williams and even Kerr when he played here, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
But we want to be sure to say, with Blanquita in D.C., what is the attitude now after yesterday's announcement that Mr. Trump has come to an agreement with Mexico, there won't be a tariff? What is the thought in your neck of the woods today?
Well, you know, Gary, it is all politics all the time. So, no matter what Mr. Trump is going to do, whether he's walking on water or not, there's going to be a way to posture because it's getting so close to the 2020 election that nobody wants to give him a pat in the back. And, the interesting thing is to see how the Democrats of all those 24, 25 candidates are going to be able to position themselves to pick the leader. One day it's Joe Biden, one day Bernie Sanders looks like he's coming up strong. Even Elizabeth Warren was like number 4 the other day, or number 3. So is Kamala Harris going to make it? Beto, Mr. El Paso has gone down, doobie-doo, down, comma down. It is shocking how they have so many people, but yet no identifiable, real strong leader, because even the people that say Biden, for one reason or another, still are iffy. It's an interesting time to be here in D.C. But you know what, guys? I am like all the folks that are watching. I see you guys. You look good. You're blue and you're orange. I'm so grateful, Gary, that you're feeling better. I can't wait to see you soon. You're right. There are a lot of us out here who want you strong and healthy. So sorry about your brother. We all love you. And I'm going to sit back and enjoy Lone Star Saturday and get some giggles and learn something about sports.
Okay.
All right. Blanquita, we welcome you back when you can get back. And listen, pass on my deepest thoughts to Nancy if you get a chance to see her.
And let us know when you set up that jump for Gary.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, that's happening soon. But you guys are going to go too, so don't, it's going to be like we're all going to be playing chicken.
Well, he's got a pacemaker now, so we got to figure this out.
I remember when Clint Eastwood was in the movie, and when they told me I was going to have a pacemaker, I thought, how are they going to implant a pacemaker in my, it was that giant pistol. So, but anyway, I'm feeling much better.
Yeah, he is
Well,
feeling better,
I
Blanquita.
thought you were going, Gary, I thought you were going back to the old 60s sounds of Gary and the Pacemakers.
Yeah. Gary and the
Thank you,
pacemaker.
thank
Okay,
you.
guys.
All
See
right,
you later.
Blanquita. See ya.
By the way, if we look back into history, and you know history the same as I do, and on this date in 1982, it was the first time that an American president ever addressed the joint session of the British Parliament. Guess who it was?
In 1982,
Yeah, Ronald Wilson Reagan.
be maybe Ronald Reagan.
Yes,
Okay.
that's who it was.
Okay.
And also,
Here's my guess.
another visit. It was on this date in 1998 when Moses became president of the NRA. You didn't know that? did you?
Yeah, Charlton Heston.
Charles
Yes, yeah.
Heston. Yeah.
They still wheel his body out, don't they? Every once in a
Well,
while?
they'll take these cold dead hands
off it.
Yeah, remember that?
Well,
Yeah, and
they're cold and dead now.
oh yeah, they really are. Now it was also 1969 when President Nixon planned to pull 25,000 troops out of Vietnam. So that was an historic time too. And so many things going in history today. We make some kind of headline every day. Vote. That's number one today. If you hadn't already done that, I did that first thing. And we'll see who wins tonight. We'll know, I guess, what, by
Yeah, we'll know by early
8
evening,
or
probably.
9 o'clock,
Yeah.
whether it's Mr. Brockhouse or Mr. Nuremberg. And also, it was on this date, way back there, when the penny postcard was authorized in 1872.
Yeah. How was it when that happened? Do you remember?
It was really nice, yeah, because I had a lot of pennies from heaven at that time.
You did.
And this is something you should remember because I know, doggone it. It was in 1949 when Lassie made her television debut.
I should remember that,
Weekly
right?
show,
Yeah.
15-minute show in those days.
I had no idea.
Yeah, well, you've been to Doghouse enough to know
I've
that.
been to know. I know who Lassie is. I remember that.
You know, Andrew hasn't been around us too
And
much.
Andrew's like over there, like,
Yeah.
what the heck are you guys
These
talking
old
about?
guys,
Yeah,
what
that's
the
all
heck
right.
are
That's
they
all
talking
Lassie
about?
was a dog. By
Oh
the way.
yeah,
I
yeah,
knew
okay,
that,
okay.
Yeah.
It was a dog.
Well, it's
Timmy fell in the well. Lassie was a big part of that.
Laddies and Lassies.
Remember Lassie?
Oh, yes,
The
yes.
reruns, right? On
Lassie
Nick at
come
Night.
home. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, you always wanted to go, if you had to flee home, you'd always remember Lassie.
Flee home.
Flee home.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk
You're
about.
feeling better.
Yeah,
You
I
are
really
feeling
am.
better.
Let's talk about your podcast. I know you guys do a podcast.
Yeah, talk to the producer about that.
And now what you do is you do it, what, once or twice a week?
We
or-
do once a week,
Once
yeah.
a week.
Typically on a Sunday evening.
And
Yeah.
where can they see it? How they do it?
Well, mostly you hear it because
Yeah.
the podcast
Yeah,
is
okay.
just the two of us. We belly up to the bar, belly up, which is the kitchen table
That's
at
right,
La
that's right.
Mansione de Oliver, and
Oh.
we just talk sports. And
But I mean, do you do it at a location particularly or just anywhere?
Sometimes on location. Most of the time it's just right across the street. I mean, it's just in his kitchen.
Yeah.
And how long is it?
It's about an hour.
Mhm.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot of talk.
It is a lot.
It is
Well,
a
there's a
lot
lot to talk
There
about.
is,
You know, we
yeah.
and we found, and we're kind of. We talk a lot of Spurs. We've been talking a lot of Kawhi. We talked the other night. We got off, on a tangent about whether San Antonio can host another professional franchise
That's right.
and where. And
Well,
ESPN came out with a poll
Yeah.
that said the Austin San Antonio corridor was a very promising location for the future of NFL expansion. And
The only problem with that is one thing. There is a lot of civic envy between the two
That's
cities.
right, and that we talked about the idea of
Yeah, that's
can
right.
Austin and San Antonio come together on that, because
Right.
Austin obviously an emerging market. They've got a different type of financial strength on their landscape, than we do. We're a little more established, but we also have the Mexican national influence, a lot of money from northern Mexico coming up
Right.
through here.
That's right.
I think the two cities seeing the economic benefit of it. I'll tell you, Gary, I think at some point it'll come to pass.
I think, and the thing is with that, we've already seen that model work just north of us,
Right.
right? When you talk about the DFW area,
Yeah.
and the fact that the Cowboys aren't in Dallas, and we talked
Right.
about this last night, that they're in Arlington actually,
But still,
and they all share it.
if you go up to north, you still see also there's a conflict between Fort Worth and Dallas.
Oh,
there is.
absolutely.
There is,
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And you know
But
what?
Miami plays. They play in Fort Lauderdale. Their stadiums in Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
The Marlins don't play in Miami proper.
Yeah.
I think there's certainly examples all over the country of stadiums that are kind of between
Sure.
great markets, and tap into several markets.
Exactly.
And the base of money that's available.
And if you're a smart business owner, you don't want the one city. You want
Right.
the collective. You want
Right.
what the surrounding area is and such. So it's just a matter of the presentation then of getting those two cities to agree to that. I
Right.
think it's doable, especially when you get them sitting down at a table like this.
Well,
But-
even though we just lost the AAF because of ill-planned, futuristic money, which they
Right.
didn't have, I think Vince McMahon has done it right if the XFL does take off next year, because he has a lot of money,
yes, he does.
and he's already got Bob Stoops agreeing to be one of the coaches. Some of the other college coaches will be joining that league. So I think you have to have enough money in the bank to carry you for the first year.
No, yeah.
Now I saw the other day. Now
Embarrassment that was.
some of the XFL teams want to buy equipment from the AAF.
Mhm.
Did you see that story
Yeah,
too?
and I think it's smart.
Yeah.
And what's funny? It's we always talk about everything is politics, and everything is business.
Mhm.
Everything's business, and
Yeah.
Money.
And if the Alliance of American Football collapses, but there's still a commodity there. There's
Yeah.
Right.
there's still some goods that people might be interested in. The XFL will be an interesting. I just say this time and again though, and although I never forecasted the Alliance of American Football to collapse like it did. I still maintain that's the most embarrassing
That's so
collapse.
sick.
Nobody did.
But the idea that another pro franchise can come in, even pro league, and go up against the NFL and college football and all
Yes.
that,
Right.
it just that's an uphill task. But it's just this mountaintop that everyone says it's football, and
Right.
there's going to be an audience for it in the spring and all this kind of stuff. And I just don't know. I don't know if it's a sustainable business
Right.
model to go up against that stuff.
I think when you look at it like that, though, yeah, I think that's a terrible climb. But I think if you look at it from the point that the AAF was trying to take, and had they had the resources to get through a season
Right.
and look ahead towards the second season, the third season, if you work in tangent with the NFL, and you start talking about becoming farm franchises and things like that, and you and I talked about that, what a great opportunity that would be for players to develop. Now you have a developmental league that could feed into the NFL like you have for basketball, like you have for baseball. You have it for hockey too.
You're always going to have, though, the mother-in-law behind the scenes, Jerry Jones. Is he going to be for another pro team in Texas? And that's my question, because when Tom Benson was alive, he and Jerry did not want a team in San Antonio, because
This is the second biggest market for the Cowboys.
For the Cowboys.
Yeah. But you know what? Again, it's all business. I mean, at some point, Jerry and Steven or whoever's running the Cowboys at some point, if they see there's a financial benefit to it, if they see there's because those owners, goodness gracious, when they expanded into Charlotte and Jacksonville, the owners made out like bandits.
Right.
You know, listen, you can come on in, but here's the fee to do it. Here's the fee to join the biggest or second biggest professional league in the world.
Right.
It's going to cost you $500 million to do it.
Sure.
We're all dividing it. You're not going to get any of that.
Right.
But you're welcome to join our
Now
fraternity for that.
you just used a word that's right now being headlined, owner.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's DeLaune Green, one of the players, that said in the NBA that they feel like slaves because of the team ownership.
Mm-hmm.
They own the team. I want to say, I very seldom would commend him, but I want to say thanks to Mark Cuban, because he said, friends, we are the owners. You are an employee.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like when you worked for the Express News, you were a writer. You were employed by the newspaper. You're employed by the city now. And when I was at Channel 5, they were the owner of Channel 5.
Right.
And so they've got to wake up, America. You know, you work for somebody.
Right.
And unless you are a single player in the NBA with your own franchise, you are an employee.
Well, like Andrew owns the What's Brewing Sports podcast, and he prefers to be known as Overlord.
That's right. That's right.
So we have decided that, you know, instead of owner, we would like the word Overlord.
That's right.
It worked for D-Day.
That's right,
Yeah.
Rod, that's right.
Operation Overlord.
So,
By the way, this is one of my all-time heroes. I thought he was one of the greatest players ever to play the game of baseball. Tremendous athlete. They called him the Commerce Comet. At least I called him that. From Commerce, Oklahoma.
mm-hmm.
Mickey Mantle, number 7. On this date in 1969, the New York Yankees retired number 7.
Oh, what a player. When I was a kid, I mean, that was the, you know, there was, and it was funny, not funny, but it's different. But back when I grew up in the 60s, and you were certainly working and
I wasn't 60 in the 60s.
No, you weren't. But guys like back then, you know, you didn't have ESPN, you didn't have television, you know, chronicling every game. You didn't have highlights. You didn't have everything was in the paper, and we devoured the paper as sports fans every day. I remember being 10 years old reading the box scores because I loved the Astros.
Right.
But Mickey Mantle, you know, Willie Mays.
Mm-hmm.
Brooks
Roger
Robinson,
Maris.
you know, Roger Maris, all these guys that were just larger than life, but it was because you couldn't see them all the time.
Right.
They became, and I'm just fascinated by that. I think that was the last era of those players that were these giants to a kid who was a baseball fan who played Little League and everything else. Back in the day when we used to play sandlot baseball every day.
Right.
It doesn't happen much anymore because that, you know, for whatever reason, but I think that's the kind of, that when you say Mickey Mantle, it just there was a tingle, you know, about what a legend this guy was, and I'm always fascinated to go all the way back to DiMaggio and all the way back to Babe Ruth.
Right.
You know, the idea of course there was no social media in those days. There was no, you know, Babe Ruth would have been, you know, Kanye West and,
that's
and,
right.
you know,
That's right.
and some other things going on. You know, if they followed him around
and,
the
you
camera.
know, those were the days that you had very little television coverage, and so you listened to radio. And I can remember listening to my little old Philco, and there was a guy named Gordon McClendon who I worked for.
Right.
And I'll never forget it. I was 12 years old, and every day I'd flip over to Liberty Broadcasting System, and he'd say, Hello, everybody. Well, this is the old Scotsman, Gordon McClendon. It's a rain-swept afternoon hit Wrigley Field. The ivy-covered walls are providing the proscenium of stage for these two combatants. Man, I was hooked.
And then you can see where you got a lot of that.
Yep.
Right.
Well,
You did a lot of that with the high school
there
games and everything.
There were two mentors that I had in my career. One was Chick Hearn, the greatest basketball announcer ever for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Other than Bill Schoening. Sorry, Bill. He's
And Gordon McClendon, the old Scotsman.
Yeah.
And he began the old Liberty broadcast recreation in the basement of the Oak Cliff Hotel
yeah.
in Dallas.
Right.
And they had an ET, they called them the electrical transcriptions, giant sound effects, and they had a bass bar that came down from, he hung from off the mic, and they had a microphone here and a bass bar here. Every time he had a ticker tape, and he would be reading that, and he'd say, Branca's on the hill, Thompson's, and he could make this up.
Right. And then hit the ball.
Yeah, and it'd sound like the crack of a bat.
Yeah.
Here's a line drive. It's a foul ball going down the left field line. Wait a minute. Look at that little lady in the red hat down there. She just got a souvenir. He made all this up.
Yeah.
And I mean, every kid in America that listened to those broadcasts, that Gordon McClendon was a household name.
And that's the greatest point. And Andrew Kent, I guess you might have been a small child when radio, the baseball games were
in its
big.
heyday, yeah.
I was the kid with the transistor radio under my
me
pillow
too.
listening to
Yeah.
Gene Elston, Lowell Pass, and everything, and hit
Way
a
to
home
go
run.
in there. Now you're going in
Yeah,
there.
now you're chucking in there, JR. And then, and then they'd hit a home run and be that ball's an astro orbit, But it's funny how announcers would have those catchphrases and those different things. But I love the idea of imagination when you're listening to a ball game. And
on radio, you have to build it. You have to.
And have Vin Scully or somebody telling you it's what a gorgeous night here at Dodger Stadium, and I'm in Corpus Christi, Texas, going, wow, Los Angeles, that it's this faraway land,
Right.
There's these oasis places called Pittsburgh, and
Right.
San Francisco, and never imagining that someday I'd see those kind of places because I was just a kid in Corpus Christi.
Right.
But to hear Gene Nelson and Lowell Pass and Harry Carey and
Bill Stern, Harry
Jack
Wisner.
Buck. I used to listen to KMOX in St. Louis. You could pick it up on the transistor radio.
I've got a funny story about Jack Buck. He was at KMOX in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the early days of the Cowboys, the first year, I think Wes Wise may have done the play-by-play, but they brought in 62, they brought in Jack Buck from St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he still did his KMOX duties, and he'd fly into Dallas like on Saturday. And he never got to see him practice during the week, so he didn't really have a familiarity with the team. And so Blackie Sherrod was one of the great all-time sports writers ever. And so Jack Buck had come in, and Pettis Norman was the tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And a pretty good tight end in those days. And Don Perkins was the running back. Dandy Don was at quarterback. Well, I think the first year was Eddie LeBaron. But anyway, Jack Buck would fly in. So he didn't really know the team that well. So I'll never forget, one day the Cowboys were playing at home, Cotton Bowl, and Jack Buck said, here's Meredith, back to pass, those to Norman Pettis. And he takes it out, 15-yard go, whatever. Well, so the next day, Blackie wouldn't let an opportunity go by. He said, well, that there sportscaster, Buck Jack.
Buck Jack. Because he screwed up the name.
Yeah, he screwed up the name.
Oh, well,
So,
you're kind of laying it out. You're just laid out there bare sometimes. You're a broadcaster and this kind of stuff.
But it was so interesting in those early days of the Cowboys, and Dandy Don was one of the great guys ever.
Well, I can see how. I mean, if any of you have ever heard Gary do high school football and everything over the years, just the metaphors and the anecdotes and the different kind of things, and the value of the description. The value of the colorful phrase.
You paint the verbal picture where the listener can imagine that he's right there.
Front row seats.
Yeah, and that's what Gordon did, and Chick Hearn did too, and it was so much fun to work with Chick for 2 years. And when Gordon ran for Senate against Ralph Yarborough in 1964, he wanted to use a lot of descriptive phraseology, so he'd send me a telegram saying, send me some more similes. Send me some more metaphors.
Like a snake in a well.
I'd say Ralph Yarborough is meaner than a hungry mongoose in a snake pit. and he loved that kind of stuff. And I said his personality is colder than a barefoot pygmy running through Montana in wintertime. So little things like
Wow.
that.
Yeah, he was able to use that.
Oh, Gordon used them all the time back in the '64
Yeah,
era, you know.
A lot of pygmies in Montana.
Yeah.
That's right.
Big area for pygmies.
That's right.
But it was so much fun to paint the picture.
Right. Well, exactly. You know, it's funny because you look at what you guys are talking about, and then you look at what's common today. So, you know, I think, you know, what do we have today that exists that kind of plays on the back of that? And it's the audiobooks. Everybody's listening to audiobooks.
It is. That's a great
so
point.
to me, what you guys are talking about is like the improv version
Right.
of audiobooks because it's live and you guys are,
Yeah.
you just go. But people love audiobooks.
They do.
Yep.
And it's because they're painting that picture that you guys are
it's
talking
an
about.
imagination. It's like a movie without the screen.
And I want to
Exactly.
give credit to a guy that painted the beautiful picture in the early days of the Spurs. His name was Terry Stimbridge.
Yeah, Terry was
Terry
great.
was the voice of the Chaparrals, and Terry, people don't realize this, he's responsible for the Spurs coming to San Antonio.
Oh, really?
From the Chaparrals. Yes. What happened was the Chaparrals were folding in Dallas, so they didn't know what to do. So Terry was vice president. Maxie Williams, a former SMU star, was president of the Chaparrals. Cliff Hagan was coach. So he was driving one day and he said, "Golly, we've got to find." And he thought, "Hey, wait a minute. There's a guy in San Antonio named Red McCombs."
Mm-hmm.
So Terry stops, goes to the payphone, and calls Red's office.
Well, be.
And he said, "Mr. McCombs, would you be interested in buying an ABA franchise?"
Right.
Because in those days it was the ABA. Terry and I were the only two full-time broadcasters in the ABA. We traveled with the teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew one another pretty well. But Terry is the reason why Red got the idea to buy the San Antonio Spurs.
Right.
Wow.
And he was the voice of the Spurs for 8 years, and we had others. I got to work with Terry 4 years doing
And
Spurs games.
here we are today.
Yeah, and so Spurs paid me $50 a game.
Wow.
So, yeah,
And that's kind of what you're paid now.
That's
Doing
right.
Radio games.
well,
The same thing.
I tell you what, when I worked with the Cowboys for 3 years, I got $50 a game for them too.
Really?
And I think Vern Lundquist gets $3,500 a game.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Yeah.
So-
times they've changed.
Times have changed.
Timing is everything.
When I traveled with the ABA, I was my own engineer, my own statistician,
Right.
and producer. So
Yeah. You had to do everything. Yeah.
did everything. I'll never forget one night.
They're not just going to give you $50.
Yeah.
I had
You had to earn that money.
That's right.
So we were playing in Anaheim, the Anaheim Amigos, that great, well-known team of the ABA history.
Mhm.
And so a guy named, I can't even think of his name now, but anyway, he was the coach, and he was known as a, kind of an elbow bender a little bit, you know.
Mhm.
Al Brightman, that's who it was. And so halftime came, and so one of the Anaheim Amigos said, Al, it's halftime. Oh, and
It's just a-
he'd sipped a few before the game.
Yeah. Well,
So, but that was some of the,
liquid motivation.
yeah, Al Brightman of the ABA.
Yeah. Again, what's brewing sports?
That's right. That's right.
That's a man after our own heart.
Kobe Dietrich and Wayne Witt and I talk a lot about the old ABA days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but we are on Facebook Network. We hope that we can reveal something in the next few weeks about a actual network that we're going to have to go out all across the country. Although this does, it's going to be a network per se,
Right.
and have you guys on with us more frequently.
That's fun. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Blanquita will be back in a couple of weeks, and we'll continue here with our studio here in the Insure One Insurance Office, where we can assure you that you can be assured with great insurance if you call John Lester.
Well, and we want to invite everybody before we go that What's Brewing Sports is our podcast.
Yes.
Andrew Broad and myself, we talk sports and we talk life and we talk brews.
And you do tell the truth, right?
Sometimes. It depends on how much of the what's brewing happens before the sports
That's right,
happens.
that's right.
And then, but we're going to have Gary on pretty soon.
You are?
Yeah,
Well, you
absolutely.
told me that last year too.
I did.
I didn't hear yet.
Well, you keep, going in the hospital
Well, I
and
thought
getting
you
your heart
said I thought you
recharged.
said podcast.
Podcast. So you're trying to get in shape all this time.
Yeah, well, I've got to do something,
You gotta
man.
do something though. No, but we really invite everybody. You could listen to What's Brewing Sports on iTunes,
That's
on
right.
SoundCloud. Just type in What's Brewing Sports, and
If you had me on there, it would be Looney Tunes, wouldn't
it
it?
would be and that's the plan.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we're trying.
That's right. That's
Thanks
right.
to Rob Hicks, producer for this program. He takes his very busy Saturday. He got up at least 15 minutes early to come over here today. So we want to thank him for being with us, and he does also my production for high school
Because
football.
he typically on Saturdays doesn't get up to about 1, right?
That's usually true.
Yeah, just kind of lays around till.
But we're going to actually be getting ready to kick off our 60th season of high school football in Texas.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
I was only 8 when I started.
I know. I was thinking it's,
But,
wow. I look forward to the 80th season. That's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
me too. But I want to thank everybody for all of your many cards and letters and phone calls during my little hiatus due to health, and I'm doing pretty good now. You can see that I don't look too good, but I feel pretty good. So I want to thank Richard Oliver and Andrew Brott, who these guys are so talented, and they can run the gamut of whatever you want to hear about sports on their podcast. And we're going to run the gamut on this show too. Blanquita will be back maybe in a couple of weeks, but I'll be here next week again. So I want to thank you, no matter where you may be, what you may be doing today. Thanks for just spending this little time with us, because we enjoy, we have to enjoy this, because we don't add too much about it, but
Yeah.
we like to talk about it anyway.
Yeah.
So this is Lone Star Saturday, brought to you by, in case you wondered, Insure One. That's John Lester. Oh, Texas A&M.
That's it for this Oklahoma guy.
Oh, you.
Oh, you.
Yeah.
What finger are you putting? Hey,
Wow.
hey, put that finger down.
You should know about that.
Yeah. I should know about that.
Well, Rob, he just had a heart attack.
They did have a heart
I
attack.
think
We
we just
lost
changed
Rob.
ratings.
We
Right? Is
lost
this thing
Rob.
rated?
Just violated some
If it
FCC.
didn't audibly.
Violated some FCC thing here.
That's right. That's right.
But I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll be back here again next week from our Insure One studios on our Facebook network. I'm Gary DeLaune, Andrew Brott, and
Yeah, the other guy.
the guy, RCO, not RCA, Richard C. Oliver. Thank you very much. We'll see you again next week on Lone Star Saturday.
Man.